Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In my previous video, I talked a little bit about the Boston Celtics and the current situation they're in right now with respect to Anthony Davis and the whole trade deadline. So if we look at the Celtics now, they are an unbelievable team, and they have veterans, all-stars, promising young players, tons of draft picks, a great coach, and great management. So they pretty much have damn near everything, and they should be title contenders for years to come. And what's interesting too is if you look at Boston in general with all their teams, they're kind of like the intellectual hotspot of American sports. Obviously, the Patriots just won the Super Bowl. The Red Sox won the World Series. The Bruins are, they're pretty competitive, and the Celtics are obviously pretty good as well. So, they've really become the envy of all team sports in America, really. But over the last few years, I think they've incurred a cost, an intellectual and emotional cost for everything they've done. And the reason I say that is because of this guy right here, Danny Ainge. Now, Danny Ainge was an all-star caliber player for the Boston Celtics back in the 80s. He played with Kevin McHale and Larry Bird, and now he's an executive with the Celtics, and he's commonly known around the league now as Trader Danny, just because of how shrewd he is and all the great moves he's made. So if we rewind a few years, if you remember in 2013, he made a big move by trading Garnett and Pierce to the Brooklyn Nets for a bunch of draft picks and young players, and basically contracts he can move off of very easily. And the Celtics were in a rebuild because the Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and KG era was coming to an end. And he was basically able to rebuild that team on the fly overnight, basically. And he's done a great job ever since. He drafted Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart, Terry Rozier, Jason Tatum. And actually, one of the best moves I think I've ever seen was when he traded down from the number 1 pick in 2017 to number 3, because even though Jason Tatum was his target all along, he knew that the first pick would be Markelle Fultz, the second pick would be Lonzo, and he could still grab Tatum at number 3 and acquire more picks along the way. And quite honestly, if this guy wasn't an executive in Boston, he could be an equity trader on Wall Street, just based on his business acumen and his overall smarts. But the problem now is that GMs and players are just more cautious now when dealing with Boston, and in particular Danny Ainge. So the next point I wanted to make was these two guys right here. So obviously on the left, we've got Isaiah Thomas. He was a huge fan favorite with the Celtics. He was only there for about 2.5 years, but over that time, he accomplished a lot of things. He was, I think, an all-star, and he led a pretty deep playoff run for the Celtics as well. He had a hip injury, if you remember, and he played through that and aggravated it some more. I think his sister passed away during the playoffs as well, and he put up a 50-point game the next day, I think. So, he built a lot of goodwill with the fans, and I guess he expected Danny Ainge to take care of him and offer him a pretty lucrative contract. But he was traded in the summer of 2017 out of nowhere for Kyrie Irving. Now, from a business perspective, I totally agree with Ainge here. Kyrie is clearly the better player, and you always want to improve your roster. So he got Kyrie, and the Celtics are in a good spot now. But at the trade deadline, Anthony Davis was available, and his dad actually came out and said he didn't want Anthony to play for the Celtics because of what they did to Isaiah Thomas. So this is really interesting now, because even though Danny improved the team, he drew a lot of negativity based on dealing with the emotional side of things. And what's interesting now is that players can now use that as an excuse to not go to Boston. So whether or not Anthony Davis or his dad or his crew likes Boston or doesn't like Boston, whatever the reasons he has for not wanting to go there, he can always use this as an excuse. So the Celtics now are in a bit of a predicament. Kyrie himself has waffled a bit on his decision about whether he's going to re-sign with the Celtics or not. And now, from a management perspective, do you still trade for Davis in the summer, knowing that he might not really want to be there? So you might have to give up young players to rent him for a year, basically. So this is the situation the Celtics find themselves in now. They're still in a great spot, but now they're in a bit of a tougher bind than they were before. So we'll have to see how this plays out. But that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.